My father's operation was on May 21st, but to get some context, we're going to have to back up a little bit. Over the last few years, my father's father, my grandfather, father, stepfather, mother, brother, and sister all passed away. They all lived around him. That was most of his social network and support network. And so when I arrived in April, he was mostly alone. He was living by himself. The surprising thing to me was some of the cognitive struggles he was having when it came to forgetfulness and some repetition and things. And so he was forgetting to eat. He was forgetting to take some medication and some of those kinds of things. And so he had the operation scheduled for May 21st, and yet his health was declining, his weight was declining, and the surgeon, he basically said that if this continues, then he would not operate on my father. And if he didn't operate, then my father would have 3 to 6 months to live. So this became a life and death situation. And so I was there working with my father, and then God brought a couple of other key people into his life as well, specifically Kurt and Sandy, and a couple of other people that we thank God for, Ken and Liz, Teresa, Charlie. We were able to make sure my father was eating right, he was taking his medication, he began gaining weight and was finally ready for this operation. And then he had the operation on May 21st, and then there's some really good news, and then some really, really difficult questions to ask as well. And so right now, I'm actually making this video to ask you to pray for us because I don't know what to do. A number of options and possibilities, but which one to choose? So the cognitive struggles, that was a surprise. My father's only 64. He's really young. But one of the things that we do know is that regardless of what happens, is that my father, he cannot be alone for the foreseeable future as he's walking through the healing end of this process, and maybe who knows how much longer. So regarding the surgery, they were able to get 90% of the tumor, which is actually, so 90% of the tumor, and he'll have a colostomy bag for the rest of his life. That actually sounded like really bad news at the beginning. But then actually when the pathology reports from the enlarged lymph nodes and the rest of the tumor came back, it was actually pretty good news. There was no cancer in the lymph nodes, and the pathology from the 10% remaining of the tumor, actually that actually came back looking pretty good as well. So the plan going forward was for him to heal from this surgery over the next month or two, and then undergo more chemo and radiation to kill off the rest of the cancer. Well, actually, we're not even sure if he's going to need more chemo and radiation down the road. This is really, really good news. But then that comes back to us. We've been through a lot over the last few years. As you know, I went through cancer. So for my children, they experienced that. My wife experienced that. We made several major moves. And all the while, we have said, and we continue to say, we will follow Jesus wherever that may be. And now we're asking the question, God, what does it look like to follow you now with this situation regarding my father? Because to leave my father isolated and alone is not an option. And here's what's happening. Kurt and Sandy, where my father's staying right now, they are retiring and moving to Colorado in August. So what are some of the options in front of us that somehow, God would raise up a support network around my father? Maybe my father would move to be around some people, or maybe there's the option, maybe we move back. Maybe we move back to the Seattle area. Maybe we move elsewhere in the United States and we move my father to be close to us. Now, my father and I, we've never been close, but God has brought me on this forgiveness process to be able to kind of digest that and process that process and be able to step into a role. My two sisters, they live thousands of miles away from my father. I'm the closest one to him. I'm the oldest son. So we're looking at this and we're wondering, what do we do? Leaving him by himself is not an option. So some people will say, and I've already heard this, Jesus said to one man who said, hey, wait until I bury my father and mother, then I will follow you. And Jesus said, he responded really harshly, let the dead bury the dead. Well, I'm actually going to share a couple thoughts on this in a future video, but just briefly, I don't think this is the kind of situation Jesus is talking about for a number of reasons. But as I was considering the possibility of, oh man, would we have to actually move back to the States? I mean, my anxiety was through the roof for two reasons. And the first reason was the fact that we've spent 20 years in the French-speaking world, and we've been working on this next step regarding Quebec and France and North Africa, and we're just getting our feet under us here in France, and what does that look like? And then, as I was flying, God brought to mind the fact that most of what we're involved in now, we can do it from anywhere in the world. The second, piece of anxiety is something really human. And that's just the fear of being criticized. But one of my friends, about a week ago, just reached out to me and said, "Hey Rob, criticism, who cares? You are called to follow God with integrity, taking care of your family and following his call in your life. And what other people say, who cares?" Now, what do we do? What do we do? So we're praying. We're entering into a season of prayer right now, asking God, what should we do?